My parents spent 8 years thinking they were helping me. Wait until they find out I've been sabotaging my own friendships because of them. The guidance counselor, Mrs. Pensett, was flipping through my file when her eyebrows shot up like they were trying to escape her face. 15 schools in 8 years, she said, looking up at me over her reading glasses. The kind that hung on a beaded chain around her neck when she wasn't using them. Wow. I gave her my practiced smile, the one I'd perfected somewhere between school number 7 and school number 8. Not too eager, not too withdrawn. Just the right amount of, I'm totally fine with this completely abnormal situation. My dad calls it aggressive tourism, I said, delivering the line with the timing of someone who'd used it at least a dozen times before. Because I had. It usually got a laugh, or at least a sympathetic chuckle. It was better than explaining the real reason, which was that I honestly had no idea why we moved so much. My parents just got that look every few months. Mom would start browsing Zillow at the kitchen table, Dad would mention some vague work opportunity, and I'd know to start keeping my belongings in a state of perpetual ready to pack. Mrs. Pensett set down my file and leaned forward in that way adults did when they wanted to seem approachable and understanding. Her chair squeaked with the movement, a sharp sound that made me think of mice in walls. Well, I want you to know that West Grove High is thrilled to have you, even if it's just for a little while. She paused, probably realizing how depressing that sounded. Or for the rest of your high school career. We have wonderful programs here. Our drama department just won regionals, and our debate team. That's great, I interrupted gently. I'd learned that if you let them finish the whole spiel, they'd expect you to actually join something. Could I just get my schedule? I don't want to be late for first period. She looked like she wanted to say more. They always did. But she handed over the printed schedule. Computer science, AP English, chemistry, calculus, history, PE. The same classes I'd been taking at various stages of completion for the last 2 years. At this point, I probably knew the first 3 chapters of every textbook by heart. Your first class is in Building C, she said, pulling out a map of the campus. She traced the route with her finger, leaving a small smudge on the paper. It can be a bit confusing at first, but I'm sure you'll get the hang of it. Would you like me to assign you a buddy? Someone to show you around? I'm good, thanks. The buddy system was always more awkward than helpful. Some overly enthusiastic student council type would spend the day asking me questions I didn't want to answer, while showing me where the bathrooms were, as if I couldn't figure that out myself. Truth was, I could predict everything about the next few weeks with almost scientific accuracy. There would be the teacher who'd make me stand up and introduce myself to the class. Torture level, moderate to severe depending on how many, follow-up questions they allowed. The cafeteria where I'd eat alone for the first week while mapping out the social geography, the jocks by the windows, the theater kids near the stage, the AP students stress eating while reviewing flashcards. The inevitable, where are you from? Question that I'd started answering with whatever felt amusing that day. Mars, witness protection, your mom's house. Because who cared? I'd be gone in a month anyway. 2 if we were really settling in. So I had developed a system over the years, refined it to an art form. Never join clubs that required commitments past 30 days. No yearbook, no student government, definitely no sports teams that expected you to finish a season. Keep your locker decorations in a Ziploc bag for easy transport. A small mirror, some magnets, maybe a photo or two. Nothing that required tape or would leave residue. And my personal favorite rule, when people asked for your Instagram or Snapchat or whatever app was currently consuming everyone's social existence, tell them you're taking a social media break for mental health reasons, instead of admitting you didn't see the point in digital friendships that would fade into archived messages and forgotten usernames within weeks of your departure. I'd learned these rules the hard way. School number 3, I'd joined the soccer team, made friends, got a jersey with my name on it. Then we moved 2 weeks before the first game, and I found that jersey at the bottom of a box 6 moves later, the letters of my name cracked and peeling. School number 7, I'd started dating someone. We'd made plans for homecoming. I left before we could break up properly, and sometimes I still wondered if he told people I ghosted him, or if he made up a more dramatic story. Building C was exactly where Mrs. Pensett's smudged finger had indicated, a 2-story brick structure that looked like it had been added as an afterthought when the school ran out of room in the main building. The hallways were already crowded with students who moved with the confidence of people who knew exactly where they belonged. I navigated through them like a ghost, present but not really there, visible but not really seen. The computer science classroom was in room C204, which meant stairs and a left turn at the top. I'd gotten good at reading the logic of school buildings. They all followed similar patterns, like levels in a video game that just reskinned the same basic layout. I walked in and took a seat in the middle of the room, not the back where the slackers sat, not the front where the eager beavers lived, just perfectly, forgettably middle. The teacher, Mr. Rodriguez, according to my schedule, looked up from his computer and gave me the kind of nod that said he'd been expecting me, but wasn't going to make a big deal about it. I love teachers like that. The day progressed exactly as expected. 3 teachers made me introduce myself. Name, where I'm from, 1 interesting fact about yourself. I've been to 15 schools always sufficed for that last one. 1 teacher ignored me completely. 2 gave me outdated textbooks with someone else's name written on the inside cover. The cafeteria was serving something that claimed to be pizza, but looked like someone had described pizza to an alien who'd never seen cheese. I found an empty table by the windows. Not the good windows where the athletes sat, but the ones that looked out onto the parking lot. I unwrapped my lunch, always bring your own the first week until you figure out which cafeteria foods are actually edible, and pulled out my book. Reading was the perfect activity for new kids. It made you look busy but not desperate, intellectual but not pretentious, alone by choice rather than circumstance. I was 3 chapters into my reread of The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Comfort reading, like comfort food but with fewer calories, when a shadow fell across my page. Absolutely not. I looked up to find a girl standing over me with her hands on her hips, looking personally offended by my existence. She had the kind of confidence that came from never having been the new kid, never having to question whether she belonged. Her hair was in one of those messy buns that probably took 20 minutes to look that effortless, and she was wearing what I'd already identified as the West Grove High unofficial uniform: leggings, oversized sweatshirt, pristine white sneakers that somehow never seemed to get dirty. "Excuse me?" I said, though I wasn't really asking. I'd learned that sometimes if you just looked confused enough, people would leave you alone. "You're eating lunch with us," she declared, like she was informing me of a new law that had just been passed by the Senate. "I saw you yesterday with your sad desk salad looking like you'd rather die than make eye contact with anyone." "Absolutely not on my watch. I wasn't here yesterday," I pointed out, because accuracy mattered, even in social confrontations. She waved this off like facts were minor inconveniences. "Whatever. I saw you today this morning, looking all tragic and alone. Same difference. Come on." She actually reached for my book, and I instinctively pulled it back. Nobody touches the book. The book is sacred. The book is the fortress of solitude in paperback form. "I'm good here, thanks," I said, trying for firm but polite. "I'm at a really good part." She glanced at the cover. "The Hitchhiker's Guide?" Oh my god, Mia loves those books. She quotes them constantly. It's actually kind of annoying but also endearing. Like she'll randomly yell 42 in response to any question and think she's hilarious. She paused, studying me with the intensity of someone who was used to getting her way. "I'm Katie, by the way, and you're eating lunch with us. This isn't a negotiation." Before I could protest further, she'd somehow maneuvered me out of my seat. Not physically, she didn't actually touch me, but through sheer force of will and the kind of social pressure that makes you feel like resistance would be more awkward than compliance. I grabbed my lunch and my book, and followed her across the cafeteria like a reluctant duckling. Her table was in what I'd identified as the middle-tier social zone, not the coveted spots by the good windows, but not the exile territory by the trash cans either. 2 other girls sat there, one absorbed in what looked like a statistics textbook, the other building an elaborate structure out of French fries. "Guys, this is..." Katie paused, realizing she'd kidnapped me without actually getting my name. "Sarah," I supplied, because what else was I going to do? "This is Sarah," Katie continued smoothly. "She's new and she was sitting alone reading, which is basically a cry for help. Sarah, this is Mia." She pointed to the girl with the textbook, who looked up and gave me a small wave. "And Sophie, the French fry architect, who beamed at me like I'd just told her she'd won the lottery." "Oh my god, new girl," Sophie squealed. And I mean actually squealed, like a sound I thought only existed in young adult novels. "I love your whole vibe. Very mysterious. Very, I could be a spy or just really into poetry." "Are you a spy? You can tell us. We're excellent at keeping secrets." "Actually, that's not true. I'm terrible at secrets, but Mia's really good at them." "I'm not a spy," I said, sitting down because standing there holding my lunch bag was starting to feel ridiculous. "That's exactly what a spy would say." Sophie nodded sagely, then turned to Katie. "We're keeping her." And that's when I noticed something that made my chest tight with a feeling I'd trained myself not to have anymore. They all had matching friendship bracelets. Not the store-bought kind, but the homemade ones with embroidery floss, slightly frayed and faded from wear. The kind you made at summer camp or during sleepovers. The kind that meant history. "We've been a trio since elementary school," Mia said, apparently noticing where I was looking. She had a quiet way of observing things, like she was cataloging information for later use. 4th grade, specifically. Sophie convinced us to sneak out during indoor recess to build a snow fort. We got detention together, and we've been inseparable ever since. "It was an excellent snow fort," Sophie added. "Structurally sound. Could have withstood a siege." I tried to imagine having friends since 4th grade. Knowing someone through braces and bad haircuts, through first crushes and failed tests, through all the small humiliations and victories that made up growing up. The longest friendship I'd maintained was with a girl named Jessica from school number 11, and we'd only lasted 6 months before my family packed up again. We still occasionally liked each other's posts on Instagram, but that was just muscle memory, not real connection. "We need a 4th for our Halloween group costume," Sophie announced suddenly, like this was a natural progression of conversation. "We're doing the plastics from Mean Girls. Katie's Gretchen because she's got the anxiety for it. I'm Karen because, well, obvious reasons. Mia's Katie because she's actually good at math. And you're tall, so you're Regina. It's perfect. We'll be iconic." "Bold of you to assume I'll still be here by Halloween," I said, going for breezy but probably landing somewhere around tragically emo. It was my standard line, my way of managing expectations, of preventing the disappointment that came when people made plans that included future me, a person who might not exist in their world. Sophie gasped so dramatically that people at nearby tables turned to look. She grabbed my hands across the table, her fingers still slightly greasy from the French fries. "Oh my God, are you like suicidal?" Her voice pitched up with genuine concern. "Katie, she's suicidal. Do we call someone?" "I have the suicide hotline in my phone because I accidentally called it once thinking it was DoorDash. They were very nice about it, actually, but also concerned about my midnight nugget emergency." "What? No, 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 no," I said quickly, suddenly realizing how that sounded. My face felt hot, and I could feel other people still looking at us. I just meant I've been to 15 schools in 8 years. My family moves constantly. I probably won't physically be here by Halloween." "Oh," Sophie nodded slowly, processing this information with visible effort. "Wait, 15 schools in 8 years? So that means..." She started counting on her fingers, ran out of fingers, and started over. "So you've been to 23 schools total?" "That's not how math works," Mia said gently. "Math is a social construct," Sophie replied with dignity. Katie looked me dead in the eyes, and there was something fierce in her expression, like she'd just accepted a challenge nobody had actually issued. "Bold of you to assume we'd let you leave without being Regina George." The bell rang before I could figure out how to respond to that, and we scattered to our respective classes. But not before Katie grabbed my phone, literally plucked it from my hand while I was putting my book away, and added herself as a contact. "There," she said, handing it back. "Now you're stuck with us. Resistance is futile." "That's Star Trek, not Hitchhiker's Guide," Mia pointed out. "Whatever, nerd. Same genre." The next few weeks fell into a pattern I hadn't expected and definitely hadn't planned for. Katie, it turned out, was relentless in a way that would have been annoying if it wasn't so oddly endearing. She'd text me every morning asking what I was wearing, not in a mean girl policing way, but so she could coordinate. "We're not matching," she'd clarify. "We're complementing. There's a difference." She'd appear at my locker between classes, usually with Sophie in tow, to deliver vital information like, "Mr. Peterson is in a bad mood, don't make eye contact," or, "The cafeteria has actual edible food today. It's basically a miracle." Sophie would add her own observations, which ranged from surprisingly insightful, "I think the janitor is secretly a poet. He arranges the wet floor signs in haiku formation," to completely unhinged, "What if dogs know they're good boys but they're just too humble to admit it?" Mia was quieter, but no less persistent in her inclusion efforts. She'd slide into the seat next to me in the classes we shared, always with an extra pen or a pack of gum, small offerings that said, "I thought of you," without making a big deal about it. She had this way of explaining complicated math concepts that actually made sense, probably because she'd break them down into story problems about ridiculous scenarios. "Okay, so imagine Sophie has decided to build a catapult to launch tacos into space," she'd say, completely serious. "The trajectory follows a parabolic path." They did things that made no sense to my transient brain, things that suggested permanence and future and belonging. Mia bought me a succulent, showing up one day with a tiny pot containing what looked like a green rose made of rubber. "It's called an echeveria," she explained, setting it on my desk with ceremony. "Even if you move, these things are impossible to kill. Trust me, I've tried. I once forgot about one for an entire summer, and when I found it under my bed, it had somehow gotten bigger. They're like the Nokia phones of the plant world." Sophie added me to their group chat, which was named Forever Sophomores, even though we were juniors now. "We tried to change it," Katie explained, but Sophie had a meltdown about losing the message history. "There are 3 years of quality memes in there," Sophie defended. "And that video of Katie falling off the stage during the freshman talent show? That's historical documentation." The group chat was a constant stream of consciousness that I couldn't quite keep up with. They had inside jokes that went back years, references to people I'd never met, places I'd never been. They'd send photos from middle school, their faces rounder, their fashion choices questionable, their smiles showing various stages of orthodontia. "Look at baby us!" Sophie would caption a photo of the 3 of them at what appeared to be someone's 13th birthday party, all wearing matching Justice t-shirts. "Delete this immediately," Katie would respond, followed by 17 skull emojis. "Never. This is blackmail material for when you're famous," Mia would add. I wanted to contribute, wanted to share my own embarrassing photos and stories, but my past felt like a fragmented hard drive, bits and pieces scattered across different states and time zones. I had photos, sure, but they were all with different people, different backgrounds, different versions of myself that I'd shed like snakeskin every time we moved. Katie kept sending me TikToks at 2 a.m. with captions like "us next year" and "when we're seniors" and college road trip vibes. Each one was a tiny paper cut to my carefully maintained emotional distance. I wanted to scream that there wouldn't be a next year. There never was. My family operated on a different timeline than normal people, one where next year was as mythical as Atlantis. But I didn't say any of that. Instead, I hearted the messages and sent back the crying, laughing emoji, playing along with a future I couldn't quite believe in. 3 weeks in, I made the mistake of actually caring. It happened gradually, then all at once, like falling asleep. One day I was maintaining my careful distance. The next I was helping Sophie with her genuinely terrible essay on The Great Gatsby. I just don't understand why he couldn't, text Daisy instead of having all those parties, and letting Mia paint my nails a color she called existential crisis purple, and actually looking forward to Katie's morning fashion consultations. We were at Katie's house on a Thursday afternoon, ostensibly to study for the chemistry test, but actually eating raw cookie dough and stalking people from our school on Instagram. Katie's room was exactly what I'd expected. Fairy lights, Polaroids covering an entire wall, a desk that was more makeup than homework, but also weirdly comforting in its predictability. "Oh my God," Sophie gasped, showing us her phone. "Brad got a perm. An actual perm. Like my mom in 1987. "Let me see," Katie demanded, then shrieked when she saw the photo. "No, no way. That has to be edited." "It's not," Mia confirmed, pulling up his story from another angle. "Multiple witnesses have documented this hair crime." I laughed. Really laughed. The kind that made my stomach hurt and my eyes water. For a moment, I forgot to be temporary. I forgot to maintain distance. I just existed. Present tense, no qualifiers. That's when Katie's mom knocked on the door, poking her head in with the kind of smile that meant she'd been listening and thought we were adorable. "Girls, do you want to stay for dinner? I'm making tacos." "I should probably get home," I said automatically, the response programmed into me from years of polite declining. "Nonsense," Mrs. Chen said. Katie was half Chinese, something I'd learned when Sophie had very seriously asked me if I knew how to use chopsticks, and Katie had thrown a pillow at her head while yelling, "That's racist!" And Sophie had yelled back, "You literally have chopsticks in your kitchen." And they dissolved into a play fight that ended with both of them crying from laughing. I always make too much food. Besides, Katie's told me so much about you. "All good things," Katie said quickly, shooting her mom a look that clearly meant, "Please don't embarrass me." "Of course. She mentioned you might be joining us for Thanksgiving?" The room went quiet in that way that meant everyone was waiting for my response. I could feel Katie holding her breath. "Oh, I'll probably be in a different time zone by then," I said, trying for funny but landing on something that made Mrs. Chen's smile falter slightly. "Well, the invitation stands," she said warmly. "You're always welcome here." After she left, Katie turned to me with determination in her eyes. "Okay, that's it. Intervention time." She pulled Sophie and Mia into a huddle in the corner of her room, whispering furiously while I sat on her bed, surrounded by throw pillows that said things like, "But first, coffee," and "Nap Queen," feeling like I was awaiting trial. They broke apart and arranged themselves in a semicircle facing me, like they were about to perform an exorcism. "We've decided you're not allowed to pre-break up with us," Katie announced. "Pre-break up?" I asked, though I knew exactly what she meant. I'd been pre-breaking up with people for 8 years. "You know, ending things before they end," Mia explained, her voice gentler than Katie's but no less firm. "It's like eating dessert first, but sad." "It's actually more like wearing a Band-Aid all the time in case you get a cut," Sophie added. "Like, you're so worried about getting hurt that you're living in a constant state of prepared for injury, which is basically the same as being injured all the time." Sometimes Sophie's logic was accidentally profound. "Besides," she continued, "my cousin moved to Germany and we still send her memes. Distance is just a number. Well, technically it's like a measurement, but you get it. Love transcends physical space. That's physics." "That's not physics," Mia corrected. "It's metaphysics," Sophie said proudly. Katie sat down next to me on the bed, close enough that I could smell her vanilla body spray, the same scent that seemed to permeate every teenage girl's existence. "Look, I get it," she said, and for once her voice was serious. "Moving sucks. Starting over sucks. But you know what sucks more? Never actually starting because you're so worried about the ending." "You sound like a motivational poster," I said, but my voice came out wobbly. "Good. Maybe I'll get one made. With, a sunset and cursive font." That night, after tacos, which were incredible, and helping Katie's little brother with his volcano project, which exploded prematurely, covering the kitchen in baking soda lava, I walked home instead of calling my mom for a ride. I needed to think, to process this feeling that was somewhere between panic and possibility. The streets of this town, I realized I'd never bothered to fully learn its name, just thought of it as school number 16 location, were quiet in that suburban way, all porch lights and the distant sound of dogs barking. The houses looked permanent, rooted, like they'd been there forever and would stay forever. Some still had Halloween decorations up, even though it was almost Thanksgiving. One house had those inflatable Christmas decorations already inflated, even though it wasn't even December. A giant Santa coexisting with a skeleton in a weird holiday timeline mashup. When I got home, I found Mom in her usual spot at the kitchen table, laptop open, surrounded by the debris of her workday, coffee cups in various stages of emptiness, post-it notes with cryptic reminders, her reading glasses pushed up on her head, forgotten. She was looking at real estate listings. My stomach dropped with the familiar sensation of impending departure. The website was open to houses in. I squinted at the screen. Portland? Seattle? Somewhere with rain and coffee and people who wore flannel unironically. I usually would have gone straight to my room, started the mental process of detachment, begun sorting my belongings into the usual categories. Essential, goes in the car with me. Semi-essential, can be boxed. Abandon if necessary. Anything I'd gotten too attached to. But something about the afternoon, Sophie's ridiculous wisdom, Mia's quiet inclusion, Katie's fierce insistence on my presence in their future, made me sit down next to Mom instead. This school has a really good theater program, I said casually, like I was commenting on the weather. They're doing Heathers in the spring. Mom's fingers froze over the keyboard. She turned to look at me, and there was something in her expression I couldn't quite read. Surprise? Hope? Fear? You want to audition? She asked carefully, like she was defusing a bomb. I shrugged, trying to maintain casual while my heart hammered against my ribs. I mean, the drama teacher already assumes I'll be here. She gave me forms, with deadlines in January. I pulled the crumpled papers from my backpack, smoothing them on the table. They were ridiculously detailed. Emergency contact information, previous theater experience, none, unless you counted the 6th grade production of Peter Pan where I played tree number 3. Availability for rehearsals that stretched all the way to May. May. 7 months from now. In teenager time, that was practically a lifetime. In my family's time, it was at least 3 moves. Mom stared at the forms like they were written in hieroglyphics. Then she called out, "David, can you come here for a second?" Dad appeared from his office. Every house we'd lived in, he commandeered one room as his office, setting up the same desk, the same lamp, the same framed picture of us at Disneyland when I was 7 and still believed in permanent things. He took in the scene, Mom's laptop, my forms, the tension in the air, and raised an eyebrow. "Sarah wants to audition for the spring musical," Mom said, her voice carefully neutral. They exchanged one of those married people looks, the kind that contained an entire conversation in a glance. I'd gotten good at reading these looks over the years. This one was different, though. Usually, their silent conversations were about logistics, which moving company to use, whether to rent or lease, how to break the news to me this time. This one seemed weightier. "We could," Dad started, then stopped, then started again. "We could look at houses here." The words hung in the air like a magic spell that might break if anyone moved too suddenly. "To buy," he added, "not rent." I stared at them. The words weren't computing. Buy, as in purchase, as in mortgage and property taxes and those little metal numbers you nail to the front of the house to tell the pizza delivery person where you live permanently. "But what about your job?" I started. "I've been remote for 2 years," he admitted, looking almost embarrassed. We thought you liked exploring." Exploring? The word came out as a laugh-cry hybrid, the kind of sound that happens when your emotions can't decide which direction to go. "I thought you guys were commitment-phobic nomads having a midlife crisis." Mom's laptop was still open to the real estate listings, and she slowly closed it, like she was closing a chapter. "We thought the moving helped you. Every time you seemed to shut down, to stop making friends, to stop trying, we thought a fresh start would help. New school, new opportunities, clean slate." The irony hit me like a physical force. I shut down because I knew we'd move. Why make friends when you're going to leave them? Why join clubs when you won't finish the year? Why care when caring just makes it hurt more? "Oh, honey," Mom said, and suddenly I was crying. Really crying. The kind that had been building up for 8 years and 15 schools and countless goodbye that weren't really goodbyes because we never stayed long enough for proper farewells. Dad pulled me into a hug, the kind he used to give when I was little and believed that parents could fix anything. "We were literally a self-fulfilling prophecy of unnecessary relocation trauma," he said into my hair. And despite everything, I laughed. "Did you just diagnose our family dysfunction?" I asked, my voice muffled by his shirt. "I've been reading parenting blogs," he admitted. "They're very enlightening. Did you know that stability in adolescence is crucial for forming secure attachments? Did you know that most people don't go to 15 schools?" I shot back. "Touché." We stayed up until midnight looking at houses. Not in Portland or Seattle or any of the other cities that had been temporary stops on our tour of America, but here, in this town whose name I finally bothered to learn. West Grove, one word, not 2, like I'd been assuming. Mom had apparently been saving listings, just in case, which made me wonder how long she'd been thinking about this. "This one has a good school district," she said, about a blue Victorian with a wraparound porch. "We're already in the school district," I pointed out. "Right, but for property values." "Mom, are you seriously thinking about property values? You? The woman who once moved us to 3 different apartments in the same year because the feng shui felt off?" She had the grace to look embarrassed. That was a phase. Our whole life has been a phase. But I was smiling, and she was smiling, and Dad was already calculating mortgage rates on his phone, and for the first time in 8 years, I let myself imagine staying. The next morning, Katie's reaction when I told her we were looking at houses was to immediately pull up Pinterest and create a board called Sarah's Room Aesthetic. "You can't just say we're staying without letting me plan your entire interior design," she said, adding photos of string lights and tapestries and those neon signs that said things like "good vibes only." "We haven't even bought a house yet," I protested. "Details." She waved me off, then grabbed Sophie and Mia. "Emergency friend meeting. Sarah's staying. We need to make plans." The plans, it turned out, were extensive. Sophie pulled out a planner, which was surprising in itself. I didn't know Sophie even owned a planner, and started listing everything I'd missed that they needed to catch me up on. "Okay, so you've never been to the winter formal, obviously, which is tragic because last year Tommy Morrison threw up on the dance floor, and they had to evacuate the gym. You've never experienced Mr. Peterson's annual Shakespeare unit where he makes everyone perform scenes, and it's literally the most secondhand embarrassment you'll ever experience. Oh, and you've never been to the lake party. The lake party is a spring thing, Mia explained. Everyone goes to Katie's family's lake house the weekend after finals. It's tradition. My family doesn't have a lake house, Katie corrected. My uncle does. But he lets us use it. And by us, I mean half the junior class shows up uninvited. But it's fine. They were planning my entire year, my entire future with them. Like it was a given. Like I belonged in their tradition, their plans, their permanent record of high school memories. Over the next few weeks, something shifted. I stopped maintaining escape routes. I stopped keeping my locker sparse. I actually put up posters with actual tape, not the removable strips I'd been using for years. When the drama teacher handed out audition packets for Heathers, I took one. When the guidance counselor asked how I was settling in, I said, "Plot twist, I'm actually settling." She laughed. That same Mrs. Pensett who'd whistled at my file just a month ago. "Not a plot twist," she said. "More like character development." My parents, meanwhile, had gone into full house hunting mode with the intensity of people making up for lost time. They dragged me to open houses every weekend, each one a possibility of permanence that still felt surreal. "This one has original hardwood floors," Mom would say. Like she hadn't spent the last 8 years barely noticing the floors we walked on because we'd never walk on them long enough to matter. "This one's close to your school," Dad would point out. Like proximity to school had ever been a factor in our housing decisions before. We looked at split levels and colonials, ranches and tutors. Each one felt like trying on someone else's life. Someone who had things like mortgage payments and lawn care schedules and neighbors whose names you actually learned. Sophie came with us to one open house, appointing herself as our vibe consultant. "This one feels haunted," she announced in the foyer of a perfectly normal-looking Cape Cod. But like, haunted by someone nice. Like a grandmother who bakes cookies. The realtor looked concerned. My parents looked amused. I looked at Sophie with the kind of affection that snuck up on me. The dangerous kind that assumed presence and future and staying. "We'll keep looking," Mom told the realtor, who seemed relieved. We eventually found it on a rainy Sunday when we weren't even officially looking. Mom had taken a wrong turn coming back from the grocery store. She still didn't really know the town, despite us having been here for 2 months now. A personal record for recent memory. And there it was. A yellow Craftsman with a front porch swing and a tree in the front yard that looked perfect for a tire swing or a treehouse or just sitting under and reading. "Stop the car," I said. "What? Why? Are you okay?" Mom panicked, already pulling over. "That one," I pointed. "That's our house." There wasn't even a for sale sign yet. The owners were just thinking about selling, the kind of serendipitous timing that felt like the universe apologizing for 8 years of chaos. "It needs work," the owner warned when we knocked on the door like lunatics, asking to see inside. "Everything needs work," Dad said, looking at me with a smile that made my chest tight. They made an offer that night. Katie threw a Sarah's staying party while we waited to hear back, which was really just the 4 of us in her basement eating pizza and making plans that stretched past next week, past next month, past the school year. Sophie made a PowerPoint presentation about why I should try out for track team with her. Mostly it was pictures of the cute uniforms in one slide that just said, "Friendship cardio." Mia quietly signed us both up for the SAT prep course that started in January and ran through March. A commitment that would have sent me into a panic spiral just weeks ago, but now felt like a promise. "We should do senior quotes together," Katie said, even though we were still juniors. Like, coordinate them so they make a longer sentence when you read them in order in the yearbook. "That's so cheesy," I said. "You love it," she responded. And the terrifying thing was, she was right. The house offer was accepted on a Tuesday. I found out during chemistry when Mom texted me a series of house emojis followed by about 17 exclamation points. I showed Katie, who actually screamed, causing Mr. Rodriguez to threaten detention if we couldn't maintain appropriate laboratory behavior. "Sarah's staying," Sophie announced to the entire cafeteria at lunch, standing on her chair like she was in a movie. "Literally everyone knows already," Mia pointed out. "You've told everyone. Multiple times. You made announcements in 3 separate classes." "It bears repeating," Sophie said with dignity, sitting back down. "Sarah was going to leave us, and now she's not. It's like Romeo and Juliet, except nobody dies. And instead of star-crossed lovers, it's star-crossed friendship." "That's not what star-crossed means," Mia said. "It means whatever I want it to mean," Sophie replied. "Shakespeare is dead. He can't correct me." We moved into the yellow house 2 weeks before Christmas. It was the first time I'd ever been excited about unpacking boxes, about deciding where things should go and knowing they'd stay there. My room was at the back of the house, with windows that looked out onto a backyard that Mom was already planning to turn into a garden. Katie, Mia, and Sophie came over the first night with a housewarming gift. A framed photo of the 4 of us from the day after we'd gotten the house, when Sophie had insisted on doing a photo shoot in front of it, for posterity. We looked ridiculous. Sophie was mid-jump, Katie was laughing at something off camera, Mia was trying to look serious but smiling anyway, and I was in the middle, looking directly at the camera with an expression of genuine, uncomplicated happiness. "For your wall," Katie said. "The wall you're actually going to have for more than a month." "You guys are the worst," I said, but I was already planning where to hang it. "We're the best," Sophie corrected. "And you're stuck with us now. Permanently. Forever. Until the heat death of the universe. That's a long time, I pointed out. Not long enough, Katie said, and wrapped me in a hug that felt like coming home, like staying home, like being home. That night, in my new room with boxes still piled in corners and my furniture not quite where it should be, I did something I hadn't done in 8 years. I put up the poster from my wall at school number 3, the one I'd been carrying from move to move, never displaying because what was the point? It was faded and had 17 pinholes from all the times it had been folded and refolded, but it was mine, and it was staying. Mom found me arranging my books on the built-in shelves, actually alphabetizing them instead of keeping them in the boxes for easy transport. "You okay?" she asked, sitting on my bed, which we'd positioned under the window because we had time to try different arrangements, to make mistakes and fix them. "Yeah," I said, and meant it. "It's just weird, you know? Good weird, but weird. Like, I keep waiting for you to tell me we're moving again." "We're not," she said firmly. "I mean, unless this house is actually haunted like Sophie suggested, in which case we might have to reconsider." "Mom, Sophie thinks everything is haunted. She thinks the school library is haunted by the ghost of a student who never returned a book. That's very specific. She's a very specific person." We sat in comfortable silence for a moment, the kind of silence that felt different when you knew it wasn't ending, wasn't counting down to another goodbye. "I'm sorry," Mom said suddenly, "for all the moving. We really did think we were helping you, giving you fresh starts, new opportunities. We didn't realize we were just uprooting you, over and over." "I know," I said, because I did. Parents make mistakes out of love all the time. It's like their signature move. "But we're here now." "We're here now," she agreed. The next morning, I woke up in the same bed I'd gone to sleep in the same house, in the same town, knowing I'd do the same thing tomorrow and the day after that and the day after that. It should have felt boring, mundane, trapped. Instead, it felt like finally exhaling after holding my breath for 8 years. At school, Mrs. Pensett called me to her office. I thought I was in trouble, but she just wanted to check in, to see how the settling was going. "Good," I said. "Really good. We bought a house." Her face lit up. "That's wonderful. And I heard you're auditioning for Heathers?" "Yeah, Katie convinced me. Well, Katie, Mia, and Sophie convinced me. They're very persuasive. They're good kids," she said, then pulled out a new file. My file, but thicker now, with local emergency contacts and a permanent address and plans that extended past the next month. "I'm updating your records. Removing all those transfer notes. Seems like you won't be needing them." "No," I agreed. "I won't." She smiled. That guidance counselor smile that managed to be both professional and genuinely warm. "You know, when you first came in here, I thought, this girl has walls. Not mean walls, not unfriendly walls, just protective walls. The kind you build when you've had to say goodbye too many times." I thought about my first day, my practice smile, my prepared jokes about aggressive tourism. "But now," she continued, "those walls are coming down. It's nice to see who you are behind them." "It's nice to be her," I said, surprising myself with the honesty. That afternoon, Katie dragged us all to the mall to shop for Halloween costumes. Yes, Halloween was over, but Katie insisted we needed to retroactively celebrate, since I'd missed it. "We'll take photos and pretend they're from October," she explained, holding up a pink cardigan that screamed Regina George. "It'll be like time travel, but for Instagram." "That makes no sense," Mia said, but she was already trying on a red wig for her Katie Heron costume. Sophie had fully embraced her role as Karen Smith, practicing her weather reports in the mirror. "There's a 30% chance that it's already raining," she announced to a confused sales associate. "She's method acting," Katie explained. "She's been doing this for weeks." "I'm very committed to my craft," Sophie said seriously, then turned to me. "Sarah, you need more pink. Regina George is aggressively pink." We took the photos that afternoon in Katie's backyard, 4 months late for Halloween but right on time for everything else. In them, we're laughing at something Sophie said, probably about the weather. Our costumes slightly wrong because the Halloween store had been picked clean, but we didn't care. We looked like what we were. Friends. Real friends. The kind who would still be sending each other memes in 10 years, who would be in each other's wedding parties, who would tell their kids stories about their Aunt Sophie, who once tried to launch tacos into space for a physics project. That night, Katie posted the photos with the caption, "Better late than never," and tagged them October 31st, because Katie could bend social media to her will like that. "Nobody's going to believe these are from Halloween," I pointed out. "Who cares?" she said. "We know the truth. We know you're here now." Winter came early that year, or maybe I just noticed it more because I knew I'd see it through to spring. The first snow day, Sophie showed up at my house at 7 a.m. with a sled she'd had since literally forever, and demanded we go to the hill behind the school. "It's a tradition," she informed me. "First snow day, we sled, we build a snowman, we drink hot chocolate until we feel sick, and then we watch really bad Christmas movies even if it's not even Thanksgiving yet." "That's very specific," I said, but I was already getting my coat. The hill was crowded with kids from school, all with the same idea. Sophie immediately challenged everyone to a race, which she lost spectacularly, her sled veering off course and ending up in a bush. Katie documented everything on her phone, providing commentary like she was a sports announcer. Mia built the most architecturally sound snowman I'd ever seen, complete with structural support from sticks she'd found. Engineering major, Katie predicted. Calling it now. I was thinking literature, Mia said, adjusting the snowman's stick arms. Why not both? Sophie suggested, still picking snow out of her hair from her crash. Double major? Or is it dual major? What's the difference? There isn't one, I said, and realized I knew that because I was actually thinking about college, about majors, about a future that assumed I'd graduate from the same high school I was attending. We ended up at Katie's house, as we always did, drinking hot chocolate that Mrs. Chen made from scratch, with real chocolate, not powder, a fact she was very proud of, and watching a movie about a prince who switched places with a baker or something. The plot didn't matter. What mattered was Sophie's running commentary, Mia's quiet corrections of the historical inaccuracies, Katie's predictions about who would end up together, and the way I fit into the pile of blankets and friends on the couch like I'd always been there. Next year, Katie said during a commercial break, we should do a ski trip for winter break. Like all of us. Rent a cabin or something. I don't ski, I said. You'll learn, she said with the confidence of someone who'd never considered failure as an option. We have a whole year to prepare. A whole year. More than that. We had the rest of junior year, senior year, summers in between, the lake party Mia had mentioned, the winter formal Sophie was already planning our dresses for, the spring musical I was actually going to audition for. We had time. The auditions for Heathers were in January, after we'd come back from winter break with stories of family gatherings and New Year's resolutions. I'd spent Christmas in the yellow house, with a tree we'd cut down ourselves from a farm outside town. Dad had gotten slightly too enthusiastic and chosen one too tall for our living room, so we had to cut the top off, which Mom called character building, and Dad called a learning experience. You're going to be amazing, Sophie said the morning of auditions, presenting me with a good luck charm she'd made, a keychain with a tiny plastic hamburger on it. Because Heathers? Hamburgers? It's wordplay. That's not wordplay, Mia corrected gently. It's something play, Sophie insisted. Katie had made me practice my audition song, Dead Girl Walking, because according to her, go big or go home, approximately 1,000 times. She knew all the words by heart now and would randomly burst into it during completely inappropriate moments, like during silent reading time in English. You've got this, she said, squeezing my hands before I went into the audition room. And even if you don't get the part, you're still stuck with us. So really, you've already won. I did get the part. Not Veronica, the lead, but Heather McNamara, which was perfect because I got to be in the show without the pressure of carrying it. Sophie screamed so loud when the cast list went up that Mr. Peterson came out of his classroom to see if someone was injured. My best friend is a Heather, she announced to everyone in the hallway. Technically, she's a Heather, Mia pointed out. Not the Heather. All Heathers are valid, Sophie yelled. Rehearsals started the next week, and suddenly I had a schedule that stretched into May. May. I had plans for May. I had a Google Calendar that Katie had made for all of us, color-coded, obviously, that went all the way through summer. There was a little event on August 15th that just said, Sarah's 1-year stayingversary, with about 30 heart emojis. That's not a word, I'd told her when she'd shown me. It is now, she'd replied. I'm adding it to Urban Dictionary. Spring came slowly, then all at once, the way it does in places with real winters. The snow melted, revealing the garden Mom had been planning all winter, sketching layouts and ordering seeds from catalogs like someone who intended to see them bloom. The spring musical performed to a packed auditorium over 3 nights in May. My parents sat in the front row all 3 nights, even though I'd told them they didn't need to come more than once. We have 8 years of school plays to make up for, Dad said, armed with a camera that he didn't really know how to use. Katie, Mia, and Sophie were there every night too, sitting in the 3rd row center, the seats Katie had declared optimal viewing position. After extensive research, she'd actually made a diagram. They brought flowers on closing night, not a bouquet, but a potted plant. So it lasts, Sophie explained. Like our friendship, forever, eternal, undying. It's a succulent, Mia added, so actually pretty hard to kill. The metaphor stands, Sophie said firmly. The cast party was at Katie's house, because everything important happened at Katie's house. Her parents had given up any pretense of supervision, and just provided snacks and stayed upstairs, occasionally texting Katie reminders not to let anyone drive if they'd been drinking. Nobody was drinking. We were theater kids, not those kinds of party kids. I sat on the same couch where Katie had first confronted me about my pre-breakup tendencies, surrounded by people I now knew would be part of my life story, not just footnotes in a chapter about school number 16. You know what's weird? I said to Katie as the party wound down and people started calling their parents for rides. Sophie's theory about the school librarian actually being 3 kids in a trench coat? Katie suggested. No, well, yes, that's also weird, but I meant... I paused, trying to articulate the feeling. I used to be really good at leaving. Like, professionally good. I had it down to a science. Pack light, don't get attached, always be ready to go. And now you suck at it, Katie finished with a grin. Now I suck at it, I agreed. I couldn't leave if I tried. I have a succulent. Multiple succulents. I have plans for August. I have a favorite spot in the cafeteria. I know which bathroom has the good soap. These are permanent people things. The permanentist, Sophie agreed, making up words as she always did. You want to know a secret? Katie said, lowering her voice conspiratorially. I was terrified when I met you. Not of you, but like, for you. You had this look, like you were already half gone, like you were just waiting for the next exit. And I thought, absolutely not. Not on my watch. This girl is going to be my friend whether she likes it or not. Kind of aggressive, I pointed out. Aggressively caring, she corrected. It's my brand. Last week, almost exactly a year after that first day in Mrs. DePensit's office, I went back to see her. Not because I was in trouble, not because I was leaving, but because I was applying for the peer mentorship program for next year. For senior year. My senior year, at this school, with these people. Sarah, she said, genuinely delighted to see me. How can I help you? I want to be a peer mentor, I said, handing her the application I'd filled out. For new students, especially the ones who look like they're already planning their escape routes. She looked at the application, then at me, with something that might have been pride. I think you'd be perfect for that. As I left her office, I passed a kid sitting in the waiting area, slumped in the chair with that practiced disinterest I recognized immediately. New student, probably. Already building walls. Hey, I said, making them look up. First day? They nodded, suspicious. It gets better, I said. I know everyone says that, but it actually does. Also, avoid the cafeteria pizza. It's not really pizza. No one knows what it actually is. They almost smiled, and I remembered being that kid, armor-plated and ready to run. I'm Sarah, I said. I've been to 15 schools. This is my favorite one. Why? They asked. Probably just to be polite, but still. Because I stayed long enough to find out, I said. Walking down the hallway to meet Katie, Mia, and Sophie for lunch. Taco Tuesday, the only reliable cafeteria food. I passed my locker, which was now covered in the accumulated debris of an actual high school experience. A magnetic mirror, photos from the musical, a sticky note from Sophie that just said, "You're pretty," with a smiley face, a parking pass for senior year, even though I didn't have a car yet. And at the center of it all, the photo Katie had taken of the four of us in our terrible too-late Halloween costumes, laughing at something that wasn't really funny, but was hilarious because we were together. My phone buzzed with a text from Katie. Where are you? Sophie is trying to convince us that tacos are just portable salads, and Mia is having an existential crisis about it. Coming, I texted back. Save me a seat. As if they wouldn't. As if my seat wasn't permanently saved at their table, in their lives, in the elaborate future plans Katie was constantly making, and Sophie was constantly making weird, and Mia was constantly making possible. I'd been wrong all those years ago when I'd thought home was a place you lived. Home was people who refused to let you disappear, who made plans that assumed your presence, who bought you plants that were impossible to kill, and added you to group chats with 3 years of history you'd never understand but somehow still belonged in. Home was here. Finally, actually. Permanently here. And for the first time in 16 schools, I wasn't already planning my goodbye. I was planning everything that came after hello.